There is a specific kind of person who moves through the world like a shadow, carefully absorbing the emotional temperature of every room they enter. Most observers simply view them as endlessly agreeable. Society actively rewards this exact archetype, pinning heavy medals of kindness and selflessness on their chests. We publicly applaud their endless flexibility. Nobody ever stops to ask what it actually costs to be completely devoid of friction. Look inward for a moment and examine your own default reactions to the demands of others. Imagine your phone vibrates right now with a message from an acquaintance asking for a difficult weekend favor. Instantly, a tight, suffocating knot forms deep within your stomach. Every single instinct inside your body violently resists the idea of sacrificing your only day off. Logic quietly dictates that you should politely but firmly decline the request. Yet your thumbs seem to possess a frantic mind of their own, quickly typing out a cheerful agreement punctuated by exclamation marks. Why did that just happen? An invisible, powerful force bypassed your rational brain entirely. Later tonight, you will sit alone on your couch, staring blankly at the ceiling, utterly overwhelmed by a profound sense of exhaustion. A quiet rage begins to bubble up, directed not just at the person who asked, but intensely at yourself for opening the door to the cage. This troubling phenomenon goes far beyond basic everyday politeness. Genuine generosity is a conscious choice, whereas this specific behavior feels entirely like an uncontrollable compulsion. Welcome to the hidden, agonizing world of the chronic accommodator. Living this way means your mouth constantly writes emotional checks that your soul simply cannot afford to cash. At the core of this internal conflict lies a fascinating and deeply misunderstood psychological mechanism. Clinical therapists and trauma researchers refer to it as the Fawn response. To fully understand fawning, we must briefly revisit the basic human survival instincts we all learned about in elementary school. Faced with a sudden, terrifying threat, our primitive nervous system instantly prepares to either fight the danger or flee from it. Sometimes, if physical escape proves completely impossible, the brain triggers a freezing state, hoping the predator simply passes by undetected. However, complex human social dynamics eventually introduced a fourth, far more sophisticated survival strategy. Fawning occurs when the subconscious mind decides that the absolute only way to survive a threat is to completely appease the source of it. In modern daily life, our predators are rarely wild animals lurking in the dark brush. Instead, the perceived threats are social rejection, subtle disappointment, or a slight, angry shift in someone's tone of voice. When asked for a favor, your amygdala, the ancient fear center of the brain, interprets a potential refusal as a life-threatening social exile. Rational, deliberate thought is temporarily suspended by a flood of stress chemicals. Immediate appeasement becomes a strict biological imperative. Saying yes is merely an emergency psychological parachute deployed to neutralize the immediate, crushing anxiety of the interaction. Human infants are certainly not born with this extreme, paralyzing fear of causing displeasure. Toddlers gleefully shout their defiant refusals in crowded supermarkets without a single ounce of shame or hesitation. Somewhere along the messy timeline of growing up, that natural boundary was systematically dismantled. Such profound, ongoing self-erasure almost always traces back directly to early childhood environments. Perhaps love and affection in your formative years felt highly conditional and dangerously unpredictable. Children raised by volatile, hypercritical, or emotionally unavailable caregivers quickly become expert, hypervigilant observers. A tiny, dependent child learns early on that having unique needs only creates dangerous friction within the household. Primal survival dictates that the child must become a flawless mirror, reflecting only what the powerful adults wish to see. Eventually, the authentic self is buried so deeply beneath layers of compliance that the child forgets it ever existed. Fast forward to adulthood, and that terrified, invisible child is still desperately steering the ship. Your physical body grew up, but your vulnerable nervous system remains trapped within a terrifying time capsule. Every casual, everyday request from a coworker feels exactly like the looming wrath of a towering, angry parent. Consequently, you surrender your precious time, your dwindling energy, and your core identity just to keep the atmospheric pressure perfectly stable. Continuing blindly down this path carries a devastating, compounding psychological toll. Renowned psychologists refer to this escalating internal friction as cognitive dissonance. Holding two entirely conflicting realities, your internal desire to decline and your external action of agreeing, fractures your mental peace. Your exhausted brain attempts to reconcile the blatant lie by convincing you that you actually wanted to help all along. Delusion quickly becomes a necessary daily shield against the sharp pain of constant self-betrayal. But the physical body absolutely never forgets the truth of your actual desires. Unexpressed, swallowed boundaries do not simply evaporate into the thin air. Repressed refusals slowly calcify in the muscles, manifesting as chronic shoulder tension, unexplainable migraines, and severe, mysterious digestive issues. A heavy, gray fatigue settles deep into your bones, remaining completely unaffected by how many hours you sleep each night. Playing a fictional character 24 hours a day requires an astronomical amount of caloric and emotional energy. Have you ever found yourself secretly wishing for a mild, harmless illness just to have a valid excuse to cancel social plans? Praying silently for a flat tire or a delayed train is the ultimate hallmark of a spirit completely desperate for rest. Tragically, the ultimate, most painful casualty of this exhausting lifestyle is genuine human connection. Dedicate your entire existence to making sure everyone likes you, and you will eventually realize that absolutely no one actually knows you. Friends and romantic partners are merely interacting with a highly curated, entirely frictionless avatar of your own creation. True, lasting intimacy requires raw vulnerability, which is completely impossible when you are perpetually hiding your true preferences. A dark, heavy resentment soon begins to poison these superficial, carefully managed relationships. Secretly, you harbor intense anger toward your friends for continually taking advantage of your seemingly boundless generosity. You sit quietly at crowded dinner tables feeling entirely invisible, wondering why nobody ever steps up to care for you. How could they possibly know that you secretly need help? For many long years, you have meticulously trained everyone around you to believe you are an endless, overflowing well of capability. The cheerful mask you wear is so flawless that your silent, screaming suffering goes completely undetected by the outside world. Passive aggression inevitably leaks out through heavy, dramatic sighs and short, clipped responses to simple questions. Deep down, the actual villain in this tragic story isn't the oblivious, demanding friend or the lazy coworker. The true source of your ongoing misery is the firm boundary you repeatedly lacked the courage to enforce. Let us dig even deeper into the hidden architecture of this invisible, suffocating prison. Carl Jung, the legendary Swiss psychiatrist, introduced the fascinating concept of the shadow self to explain human behavior. According to his extensive clinical theories, we exile all our socially unacceptable traits into the dark recesses of the unconscious mind. For the chronic, lifelong appeaser, the shadow strictly contains their natural anger, their healthy selfishness, and their raw, unfiltered desires. Stuffing these completely natural human emotions into the dark does not make them magically disappear. Instead, they ferment and mutate, growing significantly stronger with every single forced, inauthentic smile. Eventually, this heavily repressed shadow energy violently erupts in completely unexpected, deeply destructive ways. Maybe it looks like a sudden, explosive, relationship-ending argument over something completely trivial, like dirty dishes. Sometimes it manifests as a total, debilitating physical burnout, where you literally cannot force yourself to get out of bed. Your physical body stages a hostile, unavoidable takeover strictly because your conscious mind stubbornly refused to hit the brakes. Many struggling individuals mistakenly believe they had idyllic, perfectly normal childhoods devoid of any real trauma. They cannot point to any obvious, cinematic instances of physical abuse or overt neglect. Yet psychological trauma is not always about what terrible things happened to you in the past. Often, the deepest wounds stem from what fundamentally failed to happen for you when you needed it most. Quiet, pervasive emotional neglect is a silent, incredibly effective assassin of childhood self-esteem. Growing up with parents who were constantly distracted, severely overwhelmed, or just emotionally flat leaves a massive, invisible mark. A sensitive child in that particular environment quickly realizes that bringing their own complicated problems to the table only causes more stress. Therefore, they make a subconscious, life-altering decision to become the exceptionally easy kid. Being entirely low maintenance instantly becomes their primary, desperate currency for earning scraps of parental love. Decades later, that exact same outdated currency is still being spent in crowded office cubicles and intimate romantic partnerships. Consider the highly predictable dynamic inside a standard, fast-paced corporate work environment. One specific employee consistently stays late, takes on extra unassigned projects, and absolutely never asks for a raise. Upper management happily views this compliant person as a dedicated, irreplaceable rock star. Lazy colleagues routinely dump their overflow tasks onto this individual's already overflowing desk. Meanwhile, the accommodating employee is drowning in silent misery, utterly terrified of looking incompetent or unhelpful. Glowing performance reviews yield high praise, but they rarely translate into actual financial promotions. Real promotions typically go to those who demonstrate bold leadership, and true leadership inherently requires the ability to push back. Endless, unquestioning compliance is eventually rewarded with nothing but more exhausting exploitation. You constantly teach the entire world exactly how to treat you by what you are continually willing to tolerate. Romantic connections suffer from an even darker, more insidious version of this exact same dynamic. Dating a chronic people-pleaser initially feels incredibly easy and wonderfully refreshing. Petty arguments are practically non-existent, and major compromises flow seamlessly without any real effort. However, just beneath the smooth surface, the entire foundation of the relationship is completely rotten. Over time, the perceptive partner slowly realizes they are essentially dating a mirror, not a multi-dimensional complex human being. Real burning passion requires friction. It requires two distinct, independent individuals rubbing up against one another. Erase all your personal preferences, and you effectively erase your entirely unique, captivating spark. Authentic love simply cannot flourish in a sterile vacuum of endless, artificial agreement. Eventually, the entire relationship collapses violently under the massive weight of unspoken resentments and fake harmony. We desperately need to brutally dismantle the cultural myth of the perpetually __1__true. Unshakable kindness is firmly rooted in absolute honesty and unwavering integrity. Saying yes when your soul screams no is absolutely not an act of noble benevolence. Actually, it is a highly subtle, incredibly common form of social manipulation. You are actively managing the other person's emotions and reactions completely without their informed consent. Depriving someone of the harsh truth actively prevents them from ever knowing the real, beautiful you. Real, impactful generosity involves giving freely from a place of emotional abundance, not a dark place of deep fear. When you offer help strictly because you are terrified of the social consequences of not giving, that is emotional extortion, not charity. Recognizing this deeply uncomfortable, harsh truth is very often the painful catalyst for profound personal transformation. Healing from this lifelong pattern requires bravely stepping into the deeply uncomfortable, unfamiliar territory of total authenticity. Reclaiming your stolen life means fully accepting that you must occasionally be the bad guy in someone else's personal narrative. People will absolutely be shocked and dismayed the very first time you utter a firm, uncompromising decline. A few close friends might even express loud frustration as you are suddenly altering the established rules of a game they have always won. Their vocal disappointment is entirely valid, but it is absolutely not your job to manage or fix it. Your only real duty on this earth is to remain firmly anchored in your own unapologetic truth. During those terrifying initial attempts at setting new limits, your heart will hammer violently against your ribs. Hot adrenaline will instantly flood your veins, urging you to apologize profusely and rapidly retract the boundary. Standing perfectly still in the burning fire of that emotional discomfort is the absolute only way to reprogram your traumatized nervous system. Silence immediately following a clear refusal is an incredibly powerful, deeply transformative tool. Let the awkward, heavy quiet hang in the air without rushing desperately to fill it with weak excuses. Every single time you bravely tolerate someone else's mild displeasure, you successfully rescue a lost fragment of your soul. Slowly, over time, the heavy, suffocating armor of the chronic people-pleaser begins to crack and fall away entirely. What eventually emerges from the wreckage is something far more beautiful and resilient than mere politeness. Relationships firmly built on radical honesty are incredibly strong and deeply fulfilling. When people truly know you possess the inner strength to say no, your eventual yes carries profound, undeniable weight. Imagine waking up tomorrow morning, completely without the crushing, invisible weight of 50 unspoken obligations. Visualize a bright reality where your daily calendar reflects your actual, genuine desires, not a desperate, panicked bid for external approval. That incredible, expansive freedom is patiently waiting just on the other side of your deepest fear. Choosing your own well-being is the absolute most radical, powerfully rebellious act you can ever commit. Stop repeatedly setting yourself on fire exclusively to keep oblivious other people warm. The scattered ashes of your magnificent potential are absolutely not a worthy sacrifice for someone else's temporary, fleeting comfort. As the glowing screen eventually fades to black, take a hard, unflinching look at the unread notifications waiting on your device. Whose life are you